this is Steven. Again, I'm here to talk to you today about DC Collectibles, the new 52 line. This time covering the good guys, or at least the ones I did not cover before. So I'm going to start with Superman. This is how Superman looks in a new costume. I personally still prefer the classic one, but okay, this was changed to the whole idea of reinventing their costumes. As you can tell, he has no red trunks anymore and no yellow belt. And the letter S is on the cape this time around, but it is not yellow but dark, with no yellow background. He has a rather mild look on his face, and compared to his other version, that since there is another version of the same figure that came in a box set, that one is the same figure but has a more serious look on the face. Other than that, it's the same figure. This one is articulated in general sense as far as these figures go. There is no articulation in the chest nor in the waist. However, he can, as usual, move his arms up and down, and there is articulation in the elbows and actually in the wrist there is none, but there is a bicep swivel, articulation in the elbows, and the arms can, as I said, move up and down. There is articulation in the knees, and the legs can move forward about that much and can bend in the knees like so. No articulation in the ankles either. The cape is molded on and it's made of rubber, other than that, that's pretty much it as far as it goes to the reinvented version, or at least the change in the costume as far as Superman goes. The next character would be Power Girl, which is practically Supergirl when she grew up and matured. The costume is pretty much more or less the same as it was in the classic version. This particular figure came also in the new 52 line, but it came packaged with the Huntress, whom I covered in one of the previous videos. Power Girl here has no articulation in the wrists, but again, just like Superman, she has articulation in the elbows, and also there is a bicep swivel, can move arms up and down. The head can move left to right and can move a little bit down and not up. No articulation in the waist or the chest. She can do about a minor split like this much, at least in mine, in the case of my figure. And there is she doesn't, at least this one that I have, cannot really move her legs forward, but she can bend them at the knee, and there is articulation in the ankles, and there is no ankle, there is no movement in the ankle other than to just move back and forth. She has a cape, which is again a rubber cape, and other than that, like I said, she looks pretty much the same as her classic version. There is not much of a difference in costume look wise, so I'm not really sure how or in what way was this reinvented. She looks pretty much the same. That's about it. Now, of course, in the comics, she is usually shown to serve in two different in two different superhero groups. One being the Justice Society of America for some reason, and in the other one, she serves in the Justice League. So, I think there is a bit of a contradiction there to which group she really belongs to. As a Supergirl, she used to be part of the Justice League, but as a Power Girl, she seems to be a member of two different teams, depending on who wrote the story. So it seems she's affiliated with both, aside of the fact that she's the cousin of Superman, which was already long established. So that would be as far as this particular version of Power Girl goes. The next one would be Wonder Woman, based on the new 52 design, and there of course is some I would say minor differences. For example, the lining of her costume in the classic version is yellow, but here it's silver. She still has her bracelets and she still has her lasso of truth, and the costume itself still looks more or less the same colors. She comes also with a sword made of rubber, very bendable, can easily get distorted. And she also has her tiara on her head, which is molded on, and also a necklace that has a small star on it. Articulation wise, she cannot do a split. She can move her legs back and forth. There is articulation in the knees, and there is none in the ankles. As far as the arms go, they can move back and forth. I mean backward and forward, and she can move them a little bit sideways as well, like so. And there is a bicep swivel. There is movement in the elbows, and of course there is no movement in the wrists. No movement in the waist or in the chest area, and the head cannot move due to the fact that she has a sculpted hair that goes all over her, all the way on her shoulders, which kind of impedes any movement in the head. Aside from that, like I said, there is some rather minor differences in the color of some of the parts of her costume, and I also noticed that her boots here are dark blue, while in the original costume they're supposed to be yellow. Sorry, not yellow, red and white, but here they're dark blue and white. So that's another change in the color there. So instead of red, now they're dark blue. The lasso itself cannot be removed because it's just sculpted on, so one cannot even take it off, and you cannot even unroll it or anything like that. It's just there, sculpted on the side of the waist. Other than that, that's pretty much as far as she goes. Not a bad looking figure. Very minor modifications to the color, so more or less she still looks the same as she did before. A new character that was introduced for the new 52 would be a completely new member chosen from Earth to take care of the Earth sector instead of Hal Jordan, who practically quit the Justice League according to the new 52 story. I did not really read the story, but I just know little bits and pieces from what I found out. This fellow is called Simon Baz, and he was invented by Jeff Jones, one of the major people in the DC Comics. And his background is that he is a Lebanese American, born and raised in the United States in Michigan area. And what is known about him is that he was, while growing up, he had to pretty much worry about his identity, being practically Muslim by origin. And in a way he got involved with the street gangs, and just like any youth, I guess, almost went down the wrong road. He started stealing cars, which was his major sin, that he would steal cars and then resell them and things of that sort. And one time he did steal a car, but then he discovered that there is a bomb in that car, so he decided to somehow save the people around him by taking that car away from the city limits so that nobody gets hurt. So that kind of made him heroic in a way, because he could have just as easily dumped the car in the populated area and escaped, but he didn't do that. And during an interrogation by the FBI agents, he was suspected to be one of the suspects in some of the major crimes done in his area, and actually a power ring that belonged to the Lanterns have found him and decided to take him as to be the next person to become a Green Lantern. So it saved them from the interrogation room and took him away. And then, of course, I don't know every single detail of the story, but eventually he becomes the new Green Lantern for the Earth sector. And he's in no way the same kind of personality as Hal Jordan. He has his own flaws and some of the mistakes he has done in his life and all that, but the main aspect of him is that he does seem to genuinely wants to do good by everybody, and in a way I guess he's just seeking a redemption to prove that he can be heroic and do good things and all that sort of thing. This is the first figure of him that I know of that was actually made, because I'm really not familiar with the character before. He was made for the new 52 line, and this is pretty much his costume. It almost looks like a wrestling costume transformed into a Green Lantern costume, because this mask he's wearing looks very much like a Mexican wrestling mask. But he does have a Green Lantern Corps logo on him, so you can tell that he does belong to the Lanterns. And he does have a molded power ring, Green Lantern ring, on his right hand. Aside from that, he also came, for some unknown reason to me, which I'm not sure I quite understand, he also came with a regular handgun, which he also carries in battle, and that makes absolutely no sense to me, because when you're a Green Lantern you have a power ring that can be the ultimate weapon. Then why in the Lord's name do you need an actual handgun? What for? There is absolutely no use for it in any way. None of the Green Lanterns carry handguns, so why would he be stuck with one? So that remains a mystery to me. Not really sure I understand the logic behind it, but okay, I guess that's just the way it is. Anyway, going back to the figure here, I would just like to mention what kind of articulation he has and so forth. In his case, again, no articulation in the waist, none in the chest. The arms, as usual, move up and down. There is a bicep swivel and also moving in the elbows, and he seemed to be, yes, there is no movement in the wrist. He can move his arms sideways a little bit, just a bit. The legs can move forward about that much. There is articulation in the knees, so he can bend the knees. He cannot do any splits, like most of these figures from New 52, they cannot do it. There is no movement in the ankles of any kind. There is no ankle pivot either, none of that. And he's able to move the leg back about this much. So back and forth he can do it. And the head can move left to right. And he can move the head sideways a bit to the left and to the right. The head can also move down a little bit so that he looks like he's looking down at something. So pretty much the same type of style of figure like most of the New 52 ones, lacking some articulation because it's not really meant to be like Marvel Legends figures. It's limited in articulation, but the mold itself looks good, and I don't really have any particular complaints other than that gun, which is not really a complaint, it's more of an observation. And the fact is that I don't quite understand how does that gun fit into his fighting skills, knowing fully that he carries a power ring. Then why he would really need that gun. But like I said, let's assume that there is a reason of some sort. It's just that I'm not familiar with it. Anyway, moving on to the next character in this discussion, that would be the Flash. Now, of course, I believe that his costume looks exactly the same as before, with no really major differences. There is some linings all along the costume, kind of engraved linings, to, I guess, make the costume, I don't know if you guys can really see it, but there is linings all around his costume, from the front and the back. And I would kind of assume that that did not exist on the old costume, but in this new version, yes, there is some of that. And I'm assuming it was done for the purpose of making him look a little bit more sharp looking, or God knows why, something like that. Other than that, everything is still the same. He has the lightning as his emblem, the lightning as a belt, and of course around the wrists. Articulation wise, pretty much like Simon Baz. He can move legs forward, backward. There is movement in the knees, he can bend it. None in the ankles, none in the waist, and none in the chest area. Arms, of course, the same thing. No wrist movement, but there is a biceps movement, and in the elbows and the arms go up and down, and they can actually, yeah, they can go very slightly sideways. And the only really annoying thing that I find here is that his hands are not really molded in the interesting way, due to the fact that not a single one of these hands is molded as a fist. So this hand is kind of, the right hand is more open looking, due to the fact it seems that he was supposed to hold something, but Flash doesn't really use any weapons of any kind, because he uses his fists in the fight because he can run really fast, and that's his advantage. But that's why I'm not really sure why was it molded like this with an open hand. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If anything, one should give him a fist form. And the other hand, I guess, is not much of a complaint really, because the hand is just flat, and that's okay if you want to pose him into a running position. Then his hands are usually that way, rather flat looking. So all they really should have done is to just put the right hand in a fist shape, and the other one should remain flat, and at least it's a decent combination like this. I'm not sure why is it like this. It really looks like he was supposed to hold something. Anyway, it's not, other than that really, it's again a minor observation slash complaint, but other than that it's a pretty good solid figure, and not really meant to resemble articulation of Marvel Legends. It's DC Direct slash DC Collectibles. For most of their figures they have rather limited articulation, which is not really a bad thing, not unless you really want to pose them into whatever ways. But other than that, I still consider them to be rather solidly done, and Flash is no exception in that case. Now, the next one here that we have from Justice League and the New 52 would be Cyborg. Cyborg is actually affiliated with the Teen Titans in the past, but he became, I suppose when he reached adulthood, he became affiliated with the Justice League as well, to serve in both teams. He's made to look a lot bulkier than his classic version, so his armor is very thick and makes him look bigger and bulkier than he was in his younger days. This is again a figure from the DC Collectibles, the New 52 line, and he doesn't have any switchable hands like in the past where you would put a claw or a gun or something like that. He just has regular robotic hands, and he has enhanced armor throughout his whole body. The boots are enormous, but none of this armor is removable, so you cannot really take any of it off. It remains this way. But that doesn't really take away much from the figure, because the figure itself is still pretty good and very well done, quite detailed in regards to the armor. So he can move his legs ever so slightly, not a major movement in there, except for the fact that he can bend in the knees. Of course, as mentioned before, there is no articulation in the waist or the wrists, or in the chest area. The head itself can move left to right, and that's about it. There is movement in the elbows, and the arms can go up and down, and that's pretty much as far as it goes. He is, like the rest of them, very limited in articulation, and at least in his case, one hand was molded as in a fist form, while the other one is again outstretched and rather flat looking. But that doesn't really take away much from it, because he still looks good due to the fact that he's bulkier and bigger in size, which in my opinion makes him more interesting. And he has this that looks like a button at the back of his armor, and it's actually not, but it's just I guess a part of his costume. And yeah, that's about it. It's still a pretty good figure, whichever way you look at it. So that would be Cyborg. Interesting to mention about Cyborg that when he appeared in the comics, and he will be appearing in the upcoming Justice League movie in about a month and a half from now, how did he really become Cyborg? He had a very nasty accident that was changed due to different interpretations of his origin. But let us just try and follow the original story, that he was hurt during one of his father's experiments, and his father was a scientist. and due to that accident, his great deal of his body was damaged, and his father tried to save him, and he managed to save him barely by just reattaching some body parts to him in order to save his life, and he became more of a machine and less human. But in reality, he was actually a combination of both, so that's where the term cyborg would really come from. So he's not all the way a machine and not all the way human either, but a sort of an amalgamation of the two. And prior to him becoming a cyborg and prior to the accident in question, he used to be an athlete, a very successful one, especially in the football field. So he had a promising career as a young man, but the destiny dealt him a different card, and eventually he became a hero. As I mentioned, serving in the Teen Titans first and then progressing to the Justice League. He did have numerous cartoon appearances, specifically in all the versions of the Teen Titans cartoon series. He had also a very first figure made in the Superpowers by Kenner back in the 80s. And he was wearing a rather chrome shiny silver armor, and there was a variant, I believe, with the golden armor. And his classic version appeared in DC Universe Classics by Mattel in 2000s, and his early version of how he looked in Teen Titans with a less bulky armor appeared in DC Direct around the year 2000. So yes, he did have the different appearances, and of course there is another version of this figure, because one of them comes in a box set of the major 7 Justice League members and from the New 52, and then there is a version where he's just by himself in a single pack. So, and lately he's been appearing also in the Teen Titans Go, and before that, of course, in the earlier version of the Teen Titans cartoon series. So yes, he had quite a bit of appearances all around, and of course he appeared in the new Justice League animated movies, Justice League War, Justice League Throne of Atlantis, I believe, and then also in the Justice League versus the Teen Titans. So he had quite a bit of appearance. So that would be as far as Cyborg here goes. The next one I will talk about is a character that's probably very familiar to most of you guys out there, and that would be the Green Arrow, real name Oliver Queen. Oliver Queen was a young man, quite rich, and he had an accident one time when he took his yacht out into the open sea. Crash landed on some island, and he had to survive, and that's how he learned to use bow and arrow in order to survive. And then when he came back from that shipwreck, he managed to get back to his own life, but at the same time he made a decision to become a superhero or a vigilante of a sort. So he nicknamed himself the Green Arrow, and his main weapon would be the bows and arrows. Now the arrows he would use would not be just the ordinary ones, but also trick arrows that would have maybe an explosive at the end, even a boxing glove at the end, and using all sorts of different versions of it. Now Green Arrow was always represented in slightly different costumes, but the main idea remained the same, that he would wear green all the time. The early versions of Oliver Queen, he's wearing a Robin Hood style hat with a feather, and he would have mustache, a goatee, and the mustache as well. But in the new 52 version, those aspects were completely removed, and they made him more younger looking, with no mustache, no hat. He is known to have a romantic relationship with another member of the Justice League called the Black Canary. She has the power to fight the criminals with a very powerful voice that she uses as a weapon. And also Green Arrow had numerous appearances on television and in toys as well. Just to give you a few examples, he was in Smallville TV series. He even has his own TV series called The Green Arrow these days, which is about to enter another new season in October. He had crossovers with the Flash TV series, and he also appeared quite frequently in the Batman Brave and the Bold cartoon series, and he appeared in the Justice League Unlimited as well in numerous episodes. He does not have any superpowers, but he's very good in archery, and in physical endurance, and he uses that to the best extent. Other figures that were made of him, the earliest one was in the Superpowers by Kenner back in the 80s, and then again he had an appearance in his younger version in the Justice League made by Kenner / Hasbro in the mid 1990s, and after that he also had several figures done by DC Direct in the 2000s, from usually in his classic look with the hat and the goatee and the mustache. And one of the latest figures aside from this one, he was made based upon the Green Arrow TV series, so he had at least 2 or 3 figures based on that show, and this one is specifically based on the New 52. He also has a sidekick who in the old days was called Speedy, who would be a younger man who is very much an equivalent of Robin, and he would also use bows and arrows, but he would not have a color green but red instead, and he would also have a Robin Hood style hat as well, just like the Green Arrow. And his sidekick later on, especially in the TV series, became somebody called Arsenal, which I'm not really sure is that the same as Speedy because the name is not the same, but the idea of an assistant is the same, and the color of Arsenal of his costume is also red, so I would assume it's maybe just a new version of Speedy, I guess, or something along those lines. So other than that, this figure again has the usual articulation that I don't really need to tell you all over again. It's the usual limitations as the previous figures I talked about in this video, and the usual articulation again, just like the previous figures. He came with an accessory in the shape of his bow that has the 2 strings attached in between, and he came with one particular arrow that he can use, and I put it in his hand so it doesn't get lost. And he has a bunch of arrows molded right into the quiver here. They cannot be used really, they're just molded right in. And he has some additional accessories molded onto his belt that he wears around the waist. And another figure that I forgot that was made of him, but again in the classic look, would be from the DC Icons, where they're more or less represented to look in their classic costumes, the good guys and the bad guys. So Green Arrow was again represented in that line that was done by DC Collectibles, again wearing his classic costume and having a beard and a mustache on top of it. And other than that, that's pretty much it as far as he goes. The new version only really has a minor difference due to the fact that there is no hat this time around and there is no facial hair either. So he looks sort of more younger looking, so they went for a slightly different look. I still prefer his classic look, but this one is also, I suppose, not that bad. But he just looks odd when he doesn't have his hat. But other than that, I guess he's okay. Again, very minor complaints, if any, in regards to the figure as a whole. Now then, final figure as far as this group of figures goes from the New 52 would be this lady here. I don't know a whole lot about her, but I do know a little bit. Her name is Pandora, and she was again invented by Jeff Jones from the DC Comics. She had a couple of issues that revolved around her and who she is and what's her background story. She was accused by some higher powers that she committed some sins and some shady doings, which was later on proved to her that she later proved that they were all false accusations because she never did any such thing. She had the powers of moving through time, but she was very much like Phantom Stranger, another hero from the DC universe. Just like him, she was rather stuck to be in a sort of a ghostly form and not being able to influence the events that happen that she can witness, because she also has the power to travel through time. And she was involved in the story of Flashpoint with the Flash by, in a way, sort of causing Flash to unify 3 worlds into a completely new world, which became eventually the New 52 world. She was accused also specifically of opening a box of a sort, which I don't know the details of it, a box of a sort that released all sorts of troubles out of it, and she practically bears the name from the Greek mythology of a story of a Pandora's box, where a person opened the box and released all the evils in the world and monsters that were contained in that box. Well, something similar happened to her when she opened that box, which wasn't really an intentional wrongdoing. So it took her a while to prove her innocence, which eventually she did, and she managed to... This was her first original look, but she also managed to obtain a new look, where she appears more angelic looking in appearance. And in the end it was really proven that she's not on the side of the evil or anything like that, that in reality she is a good person, and she is able to clear her name by the end of the run of her story. The figure here comes with a heavy-duty rubber cape that covers most of her, and she also has a hood. That hood cannot be removed because it's solidly built around her. She did come with 2 weapons and also a small golden skull, which I keep on the side so that I don't lose it. But she came with 2 guns that are identical in looks. Again, I'm not really sure why she's using handguns. I'm not sure about that. She seems to be a powerful being of a sort, but then why would she need handguns yet again? I'm not sure about it, but if you guys know more about her, please do let me know. Enlighten me on the subject, maybe I'm missing something. But anyway, these guns are not badly done at all. They can fit in her hands, so in each hand she can hold one of these. There is also rubber holsters on the side where she can put the guns in when she's not using them. And those holsters are sort of tucked in right under the coat, the heavy rubber coat she's wearing. So one only has to push the guns back in somehow, so they don't really get all mangled by the coat. There is articulation mostly in her elbows and in the wrists as well, and in the knees, and very much the same kind of articulation you would expect in most of these new 52 figures. There are some limitations as usual. Now the cape is also kind of, the coat and the cape is sort of kind of getting in the way due to the fact that she cannot move a whole lot, like let's say specifically the arms, to move them backward because the coat is in the way. And the coat is not removable, including the hood, so they stay intact. They cannot be taken off or removed in any way. But other than that, she still has an interesting design, to say the least. And like I said, all the story I told about her is sort of very limited to me because I did not really read her stories. But I know thus much, that as a character she did not really existed before in the comics, as far as I know. So her creation kind of dates back to 2013-2014 period, and it lasted for a little while to kind of incorporate her into the new DC universe and how she fits in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, that would be Pandora, and whatever of this information that I know in regards to her. That's all I can really tell you at the moment. With this figure, I would practically conclude this discussion for now, because I do not have a full set of the new 52 figures, but in the future I will show you some of these characters, how they looked like in the DC Direct, which was the original name of DC Collectibles before 2012. So I have a number of different characters there, including Superman in his classic look, and Flash, and Batman, and Wonder Woman, and Power Girl, and Supergirl, and numerous others, but more about them in another video. Anyway, this would be all for now, and hope to catch you guys next time again with another video. Thanks, bye.